Hello and welcome to class today, 6th grade. You have made it to your final project for the year. This is going to be the last assignment I give you, so congratulations. I'm so proud of how hard you've worked. I know it hasn't been the easiest going online and with everything else that's going on right now to really focus on school. And so I'm so proud of you for doing all of that work. So now this is going to conclude this unit. And if you remember, our unit is studying Jesus' resurrection, his rising from the dead. And we heard stories of a number of different people that saw Jesus after he rose. And so that's why this is called the Eyewitnesses of Jesus Project. Eyewitnesses means somebody who witnessed with their eyes. They saw them with their eyes. So we're talking about the people that saw Jesus with their eyes after he rose from the dead. And we're calling it Getting to the Bottom of the Mystery because we're basically going to be functioning like detectives. That's why I have the magnifying glass over here. And we're going to be looking through all the evidence and we're going to try to prove, like a detective, that Jesus really did rise from the dead. So I'm going to show you exactly what I'm expecting and just give you a few examples so that hopefully you understand what you need to do for this project. If you still have questions, of course, please send them to me on Google Classroom or email them, or you can even text. So let's look at the first page. So the first thing I'm going to have you do on this project is I'm going to have you actually give one of the eyewitnesses. So I want you to think through, again, who are the people that we studied? So one could be Thomas. One could be Cleopas, who was on the road to Emmaus. Could be Peter or John. It could be Mary Magdalene. Whoever you choose, it's got to be somebody that saw Jesus with their eyes after he rose from the dead. So I'm going to give you an example here, and I'm going to choose Thomas. So you're going to put their name up top, the first eyewitness. And then once you've chosen that person, you are going to do a Google search, and you're going to find an image. So I looked up Jesus and Thomas, and here's the image that I found. So I'm going to copy the image, take it over, Apple V. All right, and I'm going to paste it right in there. So there's Thomas. And if you remember, Thomas was the guy who felt Jesus' wounds. And so you can actually see him touching the wound. And so I've got that picture there. And now down at the bottom, you'll see I have what they reported. And in this section, you are going to write it in first person narrative form. So that means as if you were the person. So let's think about Thomas. If Thomas was reporting, he might say something along these lines. He might say, I was amazed. Jesus told me to feel his hands and his side, and he actually had the wounds, or we'll say wounds from the cross. Clearly, this must have been Jesus risen from the dead. Okay, so do you see how I wrote it as if I am Thomas? I said, I was amazed. Jesus told me to feel his hands and his side, and he actually had the wounds from the cross. Clearly, this must have been Jesus risen from the dead. All right, so that's what, if I imagined Thomas, if I was interviewing him as a detective, I think this is sort of what he would say. All right, so you're going to do that for two other eyewitnesses as well. So that was number one that I just gave you this example of Thomas. And you may use Thomas as an example, but please write your own report down here. Write it in your own words and not my own. So then you go on to eyewitness number two. And you could maybe choose Mary Magdalene. Okay? You can choose whoever in that section. But then you got to do the same thing. You got to look up a photo of that person. So you'd look up a photo of Mary and put it here. And then under the what they reported, you give another first person report. So you might say for Mary Magdalene, I was so sad because Jesus was not at the tomb. But then I turned around and suddenly I thought there was a gardener there. But the gardener was actually Jesus. And he told me to go and share the message with all of his believers. Okay? So you see how I'm doing it as if I were Mary. So you need to do the first person narrative. So that would be the second eyewitness, and then you do that for one more person, a third eyewitness. Okay? So just so you make sure you understand, so you put the name of the eyewitness, you put a picture of the eyewitness, and then you put their report when they saw Jesus. All right, hopefully that makes sense. If you still have questions, feel free to contact me again. Now we're going to move past that. So after the three eyewitnesses, then you have to give three other pieces of evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. So one example of this could be the linen cloths were totally wrapped. So Jesus must have risen out of them. So if you remember, right, the linen cloths in the tomb, they were still totally connected. They had not been torn apart. So the disciples couldn't have stolen the body because they would have had to unwrap the whole thing. So clearly Jesus must have just risen right through them. So the linen cloths could be a piece of evidence, all right? And you need to come up with three other pieces of evidence from our stories that show that Jesus rose from the dead. All right, then the last section. Here, I need you to write out a 5-sentence personal witness to why you believe Jesus rose and why it is important. So let's say I'm writing this. I would say, I believe that Jesus rose from the dead because he has changed my heart and made me want to live a different life. Okay, and then I would continue on, and I would write 5 sentences. And this is my own personal testimony, why I believe Jesus rose and why I think it's important. Okay, hopefully that is clear. Those are the different parts that you need to do. I'm going to run it through just one more time. If you already understand it, you can stop watching the video, but if you're still a little bit confused, just listen one last time. So what you got to do is first you got to do 3 eyewitnesses. So you can use Thomas, you can use Mary Magdalene, Peter, John, whoever you want to use. And then include a picture of that eyewitness that you look up on Google. And then write a first-person report of when they saw Jesus. If you did Cleopas, you could talk about, I was walking on the road with Jesus, but I didn't even know it was him. But suddenly he broke bread, and then I knew it was actually Jesus, because he had done that same thing with the disciples before. Okay, so there's another example. So you got to give 3 different eyewitnesses, the picture, what they reported. Then you need to give 3 other pieces of evidence from the stories that Jesus rose. And then lastly, write out a 5-sentence personal testimony or witness why you believe Jesus rose and why it is important. And you'll see underneath, I also did mention, if you don't believe personally, if you feel like you're not in a spot where you believe in Jesus, then write 5 sentences why you still don't believe, even though you've seen this evidence. Okay? All right. Hopefully that all makes sense. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'll be sure to set up a one-on-one to make sure that you know what you have to do. All right. This is your only assignment that you have for the rest of class, and so I hope it goes really well. It will be due next week, Thursday, and then you will be finished with Bible class. Way to go, 6th grade.